All right, and good morning, and welcome everyone to today's session of Truly Foundation with your host, Oliver Blue, and the Course in Miracles. And I am delighted to be here in session today with those that are tuning in live and or watching the replay. Thank you so much for joining in. And if you have been following this project that we have been on, you know what our main aim is, our main goal, the outcomes that we want, and that is for you to take the content of this mind training and make it your very own tool to help to transform your thinking by renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will for your life, which is the same will of God for all of us. And so we are on the home stretch here as we are today looking at lesson 329, and we are headed to the end of this project where we would have completed all 365 lessons in the workbook out of A Course in Miracles. And so we're continue in this section on what is the ego. And if you can recall, we said that, and I'll just read a little out of the section on page 467 that talks about the ego. It says that the ego is idolatry. It's a sign of a limited and a separate self born in a body doomed to suffer and to end its life in death. It is the will that sees the will of God as an enemy and takes a form in which it is denied. The ego is the proof that strength is weak and love is fearful. Life is really death, and what opposes God alone is true. The ego is insane, as it says here. And in fear, it stands beyond the everywhere, apart from all, separated from the infinite. In its insanity, it thinks that it has become a victor over God himself. And in its terrible autonomy, it sees the will of God has been destroyed. It dreams of punishment. It trembles at the figures in its own dreams. Its enemies who seek to murder it before it can ensure its own safety by attacking them. So this is a description of what the ego mindset or the ego thought system promotes. It is an idea that has its origin in the belief in separation. If you've been around the Course in Miracles for any length of time, if you've listened to any advanced spirituality, you know that mankind's condition of being in the state that it's in terms of our belief in these individual selves being separate from one another and separate from God, is at the basis of the correction that the Course is aimed at, and that is to correct our perception about ourselves. And the way you correct your perception or misperception about yourself is through the renewing of the mind and embracing not the thought system of the ego that has its basis in separation, sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, but that we embrace every thought of God, which is every thought of love or every thought of reality, because God, love, reality are all synonymous truth. We embrace every thought of truth because we have discovered that it is the mind, it's the mechanism of the mind and the activity of the mind, which are thoughts. Thoughts are activities of the mind. The mind, in and of itself, is neutral, but it is the activity of the mind, whether our thoughts are constructive or destructive. It's what has determined and what is determining our state of consciousness, our state of being. Has determined our experiences, and it will determine what you will experience in the future. And so the mind is the focal point. This whole course is built on the idea that the mind needs training. We need mind training. We have been too highly developed in the idea of mind wandering, allowing the mind to think and to meditate and to concentrate and to focus on destructive thoughts, not understanding that in the creative process, thought is the core of the creative process. What do I mean? Everything that you can see, hear, taste, touch, feel in the world of form is a result of a thought that created an idea that gained energy and substance to eventually bring it into form. That is the creative process. That is how creation on this plane exists. Mankind has been given this marvelous mechanism called the mind. And it is through the mind that we access all the energy of life, that we access all of the energy, all of the infinite intelligence, all the creativity by use of our intuition, our imagination, by use of our other four mental faculties like reason and memory and perception. All these mental faculties, all these mental gifts have been given to humanity. And along with those gifts, we've been given stewardship over all creation. We are God's highest creation. We are made in the image and likeness of God. We are created beings. And when we don't understand that creative process, when we don't understand ourselves, when we don't understand the power that is within us, the power to create, we miscreate. We use our minds to think destructively. We use our minds to create that which is not real, that which is not loving, that which is not equal, that which is not uh, serving to all humanity. And so we have been experimenting with life, not understanding our physiological or our psychological makeup. And thus we have been repeating the same error over and over again, generation to generation. This is what we've been doing. And thus you see a world, thus you have the history of the world that includes a lot of destructive events and activities, a lot of oppression, a lot of suppression, and a lot of inequality. Yeah, there's been good things that has happened. Man still has evolved in terms of what we've been able to create to help us to enjoy life at different levels. But at the same time, we keep miscreating uh, and keep subtracting from that which is good by not understanding our makeup, not understanding our identity. And so this whole 365 lessons that we've been studying out of A Course in Miracles is helping us to understand who we are, number one, to understand the power of our creation, that we are creating in the image and likeness of God, that we remain as these powerful creative beings, that we remain as God created us. Until there is a collective understanding of who we are as one in God, one with each other, we will continue to uh, flounder in darkness and create hardship and suffering and pain and dis-ease for ourselves. But we are a part of this grand awakening where humanity is waking up to the reality of the truth of who we are and beginning to understand that this marvelous, powerful creation that we are. And will begin to create only love, to teach only love, to share only love. And so we are a part of this awakening, this truly foundation, this platform, what we do here. Our goal is to be a part of that grand awakening. And so here we are learning that which is opposed to God, we have lumped it under the idea of an ego idea or an ego thought system that has its basis in separation. We've talked about this over and over again for over a year and a half now. And we're going to keep ringing the bell until we get it. And so the second part of this section on what is the ego talks about that the ego really is an idea that we made up. It's really not even real. But we've given our power, we've given our creativity over to it. But in truth, it says that what God created, which is you and me, is egoless, because God is not the author of confusion. God is not the author of separation. God is not the author of division. God is not the author of pain and suffering. God is not the author of ignorance. God is not the author of a world that is opposed to its own self. God is love. God is light. And in God, there is no darkness. So the darkness that we have experienced on the stage called life is our own creation, the creation of man, by the misunderstanding and the misuse of this creative oneness that we share with God and with each other. And so here it says, what God created in timelessness and in the space of no form, it says what God created is egoless. In other words, there is no opposites in God. There is no opposites in love. God is, and there is nothing else. Love is, and there is nothing else. So there's something else that we see and experience is our own creation. It's our own creation. And so it says, what God created is egoless. So in reality, you are not opposed to God. In reality, there is no fear, there is no death, there is no opposites. In reality, there are no enemies, there are no form, there is no time. In reality, you are not insane. We're not insane, but we are sane. In reality, we're not autonomous, but we all share the same life, the same love, the same being, the same space, the same power, the same intelligence that God is. In reality, there is no punishment. There are no dreams. There are no enemies. There's only God, and we are that. And so here it says, what God created is egoless. That's what it means. It says, what can one know of madness and of death, or the death of God, when one abides in God himself? Because we are love, how can we know of anything but love? The fact that we are eternal and infinite and self-aware, how can we know of separation? It only can happen in dreams. It only can happen in hallucination and fantasies and wild, vain imaginings, where we're using the mind and imagining something that is not true. And so it says, what can one know of sorrow and suffering if one is born of love? It says, what can one know of sorrow and suffering when he lives in eternal joy? What can he know of fear and punishment, of sin and guilt? What can one know of hatred and attack when all there is surrounding him is everlasting peace? Are you aware that the love that God is and the light that God is penetrates and permeates and fills all the interspaces of all existence? Jesus said it this way. He said the kingdom of God is spread out throughout all creation. He said, but man see it not. And then he goes on and says that the kingdom of God is you. The kingdom of God is not only in you, but the kingdom of God is you, meaning that you are as God is. And just like God, who so loved this universe and the world, his creation, that he gave everything, everything that is of love, everything that is of light. God has given us everything. So therefore, there is nothing missing and nothing broken in us. Well, so where does the pain and suffering and the limitation and the lack and the fear and the guilt and the sin consciousness come from? It comes from our own misuse of this marvelous mind that we have. We're getting and setting the record straight through these teachings and through this whole project that we've been on for a year and a half. And so he says, who could know of these things? When all that surrounds us is everlasting peace, forever conflict free and undisturbed, in deepest silence and tranquility. This is what surrounds us. There's tranquility, there's this deep silence, there's this forever presence of peace, the absence of conflict. This is what really exists in the egoless creation of God, which is you and me. When we align our thinking, when we embrace the truth of who we are, but when we take this tiny mad idea of separation and promote something that is not real and not true, we miscreate a world that in an environment and a surrounding and conditions, and we attract to ourselves things that we don't even want and don't realize that we are doing it to ourselves. Everything is a projection of humanity. Every experience, every creation is a projection that comes through the mind of humanity. Your very own life, your very own relationships, your very own environment is your creation. Yes. And the good news is, if we're not content, if we're not at peace, if we're not if we don't enjoy what we are experiencing, the good news is we can take our creative power and create that which we do enjoy, that which is peaceful, that which is loving, that which is kind, that which is judgeless and painless. We can do it. I have, all humanity. We have this marvelous mechanism called the mind that we're able to take and create like unto our Father. And so it says, to know reality is not to see the ego and its thoughts, its works, its acts, and its laws, and its belief, its dreams, its hopes, its plans, or its salvation, and the cost belief in it entails. So that's how we know reality. We look past the ego thought system. We look past the lie. We look past the fear. We look past the all the sights and the sounds that this world would try to use to communicate to us that love has died, that God is not real, that we are not the same, that we are separate. We look past it. We forgive it and only see the loveliness of what God created. That's what Jesus meant when he said, the pure in heart shall see God in everything. Why? Because God is in everything. It's like we said earlier. God permeates and penetrates and feels all things. We just need to align ourselves with the purposes of God. Everything is usable. Everything in form and in the formless is usable to bring humanity to a state of awakening, to know the truth. And so it says, in suffering, the price for faith in the ego system is so immense that crucifixion of what God created is offered daily at its darkened shrine. So it's talking about our falling asleep and seeing ourselves as something other than what God created. And we worshiping at the shrine of the ego and its lies and its deception and its preposterous thinking. But then it goes on to say, yet, and I have to pause here for one moment, so bear with me. I have to pause for one moment. Bear with me. All right. I do apologize for that. So where was I? So In conclusion, in the section on what is the ego, it says, yet will one offer of forgiveness solve the whole problem. This is how powerful the idea of forgiveness is. We play around with the idea of forgiveness, but God doesn't play around with the idea of forgiveness. He said, this is the greatest gift that you have on this in your human experience. This is your way out. One lily of forgiveness, one offering of letting go of that which is not real. One tiny little willingness to let go of the falsity and the falsehood that we have been so indoctrinated and conditioned in. He said, just letting it, one offering of forgiveness, to let it go, to forgive that idea for the truth. He said, that's your only way out. The truth is our only way out. For us to come into the knowledge of the knowing of the truth is our only way out of our own pain and our own suffering. And it is the path to our peace, our joy, our fulfillment, our happiness, our correct creation, our mind of Christ. Forgiveness is what points us to it. And so it says, yet one lily of forgiveness change. He said, yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light. Oh my God, it is through forgiveness that we release the darkness and we are made aware of the light that is already present. You know, the aim, it says that the aim of the course is to remove the blocks that are, it said, to remove the blocks to the awareness that love is always present. And the way we remove the blocks to the awareness that love is always present is through forgiveness. Not the forgiveness that the world talks about or religion talks about, but we're talking about the Jesus brand of forgiveness, or the course brand of forgiveness, or the God brand of forgiveness. And that is that what we thought occurred has not occurred. What we thought our brother did to us has not occurred. What happens in dreams are not real. What happens in an ego mind is not reality. And so by letting it go, simply letting it go, removes the block of darkness and makes light aware. It's the waking up process. It's the recognition that we remain as God created us, that we are the holy creations of God, that we are the loving beings that God is. And that the dream of separation is over the moment that we embrace this truth. And so it says, yet will one lily of forgiveness change the darkness into light, the altar of illusions to the shrine of life itself. And peace will be restored forever to the holy mind. See, where is peace? In the holy mind. Where is our disturbance? In the mind that believes is separate. Where's all our troubles, all our suffering and pain? In the mind that believes that it's separate. The mind that believes that it is limited. The mind that believes that it is different. The mind that believes that it deserves punishment. The mind that believes that it is a body. It says, this forgiveness will change darkness into light. Peace will be restored in the mind which God created. Notice now, the mind that God created as his only creation, which is his dwelling place, the mind, which is his joy, the mind of Christ, or the mind of God, which is his love, the mind of God, or the mind of Christ. Completely God's, completely one with him. So there is in reality but one mind, one universal mind that we all have access to. And when we wake up and realize we have access to this one mind, and we're willing to let go of the mind that we made, of the ego idea and the ego thoughts that we made, we enter into the rest of God. We enter into our own rest. We cease from our own works, and we enter into the finished works, the finished creations of God, which is our original state of being, which is peace. It's just that simple. It is just that simple. And so that was a review of what is the ego. We're in this section, and we only got 2 more lessons to help bring this home. So today we're going to be looking at lesson 339, which supports that idea. And so the thought for today in lesson 339 in the workbook for student lessons of A Course in Miracles is this: I will receive whatever I request. Why is that? Say that again now. I will receive whatever I request. Why can one think that? Why can one know that? Because we understand the creative process. We are creative beings. That we all have this mind. And in this mind, we have the ability to make up our mind. What is it that we really want? Because we're always creating, we're always making requests through our minds. How are we making requests, Oliver? By our thoughts, our thought patterns. Every time we think a thought, that thought is either constructive or destructive. And if we continue to think the same thought, whether it be constructive or destructive, we're using our creative power to bring into form that thought. And you might say, well, I wouldn't request hurt or pain or lack or sickness or disease, but we must understand that we are making the request, not only in our own thoughts that we think about ourselves, but when we think of thoughts about others, when we desire for others to have destructive experiences, because we're holding on to grievances and we're holding on to hurt and pain, and we're designed for others to have an experience that we don't even want for ourselves. We don't understand that what you will have for your brother, you will have for yourself. So we're always making requests, and we're going to have what we request because we're made up that way. Whatever seed is sown, it will produce after its own kind. Every seed produces after its own kind. Every thought produces after its own kind. We are that powerful of creative beings. We are a creative machine. This mind, this marvelous mind that we have, it is what creates everything. Look around you, everything in that space that you are, even what you're listening to, even what you're looking at. Look at around every single thing in this room or the space that you're in. It came through humanity. It came through the creative process in humanity. It came through the mind of humanity. In the beginning, and it began with a thought. And that thought evolved into an idea. And that idea evolved into the fact that someone got emotionally involved with the idea and began to attract to themselves all the material, all the knowledge, all the information, all the resources that is needed to bring that into form. And then it brought it into form. And that's how all of us are made up. That's how the creative process is. We are in the middle of that. But we don't understand that. We use our marvelous mind to create, not constructively, but destructively. And so we end up with relationships that are ugly. We end up with careers and jobs that we don't even like. We end up with our health and condition. We end up in an unhealthy place, in an unhealthy mindset. We end up with a body that we don't take care of. We end up with ideas that we feel like we deserve punishment, that we're not worthy, we're just this and we're just that. All the conditioning of the world that creates the destructive thoughts. We see ourselves as inferior or superior. All of this stuff comes through the mind of humanity. And we are receiving what we are requesting. So look, take an examination of your own life. Where are you discontent? Where are you in terms of you don't like your situation, circumstance, or condition? Well, first admit that we created it. And then secondly, accept the reality that you can recreate something else. It's just that simple. So we will receive what we request. And so here's what the lesson says. No one desires pain. I mean, if you ask a person, do you desire pain? They would say no. You ask anyone, say, do you desire pain? They will naturally say no. It says, but he can think that pain is pleasure. How do we think that pain is pleasure? When we allow our thoughts to hold an idea of pain for another, and we think that's pleasure, we're going to get pleasure out of acknowledging or seeing someone else in pain, but not understanding that the thought that we hold to have others experience pain is the thought that we're holding for ourselves. Because remember, there's only one of us. And so when we hold a thought of pain about someone else, we're holding it about ourselves because there's only one of us. When we're thinking about bringing pain or hurt to someone else, we don't understand that we're going to bring hurt and pain to ourselves. Because the universe only knows the one. So when we speak pain or discomfort upon others, we're speaking it upon ourselves. Jesus said the same judgment that you use to judge others will be the same judgment that you're rendering against yourself. The same judgment that you meet will be rendered unto you. So you're receiving what you have requested. He said, no one would avoid his happiness. Everyone wants to be happy. But it says no one would want to avoid that. No one would avoid their own happiness. But we do that, not understanding our thinking, our using our thinkings, our feelings, our words, our action, our deeds. It says, but he can think that joy is painful, threatening, and dangerous. We have the ability to do that. Even though we would not avoid our own happiness. But we think that joy is painful, threatening, and dangerous. Everyone will receive what he requests. You have received what you have requested. Your life, your experiences have been an accumulation of what you have requested in your thinking, of what you have requested for others. Is your thinking destructive or constructive? Constructive thinking means that the thoughts that we hold and the ideas that we promote are good for everyone, including you. Destructive thoughts or ideas or feelings that we hold that does not promote abundance. It does not promote harmony. It does not promote equality. They're selfish, egotistical thoughts that we hold, where we divide and subdivide, where we see enemies, where we make enemies, where we see differences and make differences, where we're always in contention, where we're always seeing the ego's uh, idea and promoting it. When anytime we promote separation and division, we're promoting the ego idea. We're getting, and we're going to get from what we ask for. We're asking for it. When we think in a way that is not loving, when we act in a way that is not loving, then we don't understand the creative power that we are. We just take for granted that life is going to bring to us our fortune or our demise. No, what we experience is a projection of our own thinking. It's always been that way. That's why we spend so much time with this whole process of teaching transformation, this whole process of understanding that it is our responsibility to renew the mind and to bring the mind under the subjection of the one will, that the will of love, of the will of God, so that we don't be the destructive beings. And so it says, everyone will receive what he requests, but he can be confused indeed about the things he wants, the state he would obtain. We could be confused about it, not understanding who we are. Confusion comes from not knowing yourself. Confusion comes from not understanding yourself, not understanding the creative process, not understanding the power that is within you. What can he then request that he would want when he receives it? When we understand the process of creation and that we are responsible for everything that we have created, every experience, every event, then we, through that understanding, would only request that which we want to receive. It says, he has asked for what will frighten him and bring him suffering. Not knowingly, this is what we do. We ask for what frightens us and what brings us suffering, not knowingly, by the way, the words we speak, the thoughts we think, the feelings we hold, the unforgiveness that we withhold, our withholding our love, the grievances that we hold against each other, the ideas we hold that are egotistical. When we do this, it says that we bring on these frightening scenarios. We bring on this suffering to our own self. These ideas and thoughts of guilt and condemnation where we think that we deserve punishment. Where does that come from? It comes from the ego thought system. It comes from the conditioning of this world. It comes from a false place. It doesn't come from truth. It says, let us resolve today. Let's get this thing straight today. To ask for what we really want and only what we want. That we may spend this day, now that we've learned what we've taught up until now. Everything that I've taught up until now in this one session is enough to turn your life around, turn my life around, and to use my creative mind, to use the power of God that is within me. Because God has given us all the power in heaven and earth to create that which we want. It says, let us this day resolve to ask only for what we want. And only what we want. That we may spend this day in fearlessness, without confusing pain with joy or fear with love. See, there is confusion. And God is not the author of confusion. Love is not the author of confusion. The idea of separation, sin, guilt, and fear is the author of confusion. It is the ego thought system that we have embraced. Today we forgive it, we let it go, and we understand the creative power that is within us. to will and to do, and to participate in that good and perfect and acceptable will of God, which is our will. Let the will of God be done. Let it be on earth as it is in heaven, as the prayer says. You are in complete control of that, whether you know it or not. Whether you know it or not, you have created every scenario in your life. I have, we all have. Collectively, we've created this world. All of the good things we've created, all of the things that are destructive, we've created them. How do we eliminate the destructive ways, the destructive creations? By waking up to the truth and declaring that this day, today, we will create only the things that we want, only in loveliness. Today, we will no longer create in fear or confuse pain and joy or fear and love. So, in conclusion of Workbook Lesson 339, I will receive what I request, and I will only request what I want. I will only think constructive thoughts. I will only give my feelings and emotions over to that which is constructive, that which is loving. And I would no longer entertain and use my mind for destructive ideas to hurt myself or to hurt others. I would no longer see inequality. I would no longer see the injustice that I made up. I will be the supporter and the promoter and the advocate for every thought of God. And so, Father, this is your day. This is the day that the Lord has made, that God has made, that love has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Why can we rejoice? Because God has given unto us all things that pertain to life and godliness and peace. God has given us these marvelous minds in the mind of Christ to create like unto himself. Love only creates like unto itself. And it's because we are these loving beings. Today, we will only create like unto ourselves. Only. So this is your day. It is a day in which we would do nothing by ourselves because we're not these separate ego selves. We are egoless. But we will hear God's voice. We will hear the voice for love. We will hear the voice for peace and joy and prosperity. We will hear the voice for abundance. We will hear the voice of healing. We will hear the voice of miracles. We will hear the voice of joy. We will hear the voice of reconciliation. We will hear the voice of the awakening. We will hear the voice of the enlightenment that we share. We will hear your voice in everything that we do, requesting only what you offer us, requesting only what love offers, accepting only your thoughts, every thought of God, accepting only thoughts that God shares with all creation. So that is the conclusion, that when we accept the thoughts of God, every thought of God, and every thought of God is love and light. That means that any thought that enters into our space that is not loving and is not filled with the light, then we what? We don't accept it. We reject it. And we have that freedom, the freedom to choose. We choose to what? Reject destructive ideas, destructive thoughts, the destructive ways of the past. And this day, we only choose to accept constructive thoughts, which are every thoughts of love, every thought of God. So there you have it. Workbook lesson 339. I will receive what I request. It is a law. It's the law that governs life. It's it's the law of the spirit that has made us free from the law of sin and death, as the writer said. That's made us free from the ego idea of separation. Thank you so much for being with me today. And we look forward to what is to come. It just gets deeper and wider and more exciting and more expansive and more enlightening, where we're able to turn our life around and align ourselves with the truth that is true always. Have a great day. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.